Hello everyone and welcome. It's really lovely to have you here with us today for this WIRA Insights Doctoral and Early Career Network webinar. We're really glad you made the time to be here. This session is especially for those of you who are early in your research careers, including those who are conceptualising projects, brainstorming ideas and starting to think about how to share your work with the wider community. Conferences can feel like big, busy spaces. This team here, we've just been to the AERA conference in Los Angeles and there were over 15,000 delegates, so they can be big. Other conferences are a little smaller, where you might get 200-300 people, and then there's everything in between. Conferences are incredibly energising and inspiring, and they are where most people who care about the same questions turn up, and they'll give you feedback, and that really helps you develop your work. You begin to carve out your own place in the field and get to know who the key people are working in the same areas. But before any of that happens, there's the small matter of actually getting your proposals accepted. And that's what today is all about. We're going to spend this webinar helping you feel more confident about the whole submission process. We'll discuss when to start thinking about presenting your work, how to plan ahead, and how to make sure your proposal really communicates the core messages of your research. A lot of people wait until the last minute to think about conferences, but the truth is that planning for them is something that can sit quite naturally alongside your research process. So we'll take a moment to situate conference submissions within the bigger picture of your academic year and the project timeline. We'll also talk about what makes a proposal stand out. Many conferences receive far more submissions than they can accept, and sometimes the difference between being accepted and not this time isn't the quality of your research. It's just how clearly the proposal tells a story of that research, how clearly your research proposal links to the conference theme, and whether you've chosen a network that within which your proposal will fit. So today's webinar is about helping you tell that story well. Another part of the process is understanding what happens once you hit that submit button. Once you send it off, reviewers will receive your conference submission. They are real people. They're busy people with limited time. They use specific criteria and a lot of proposals to get through. So I have just reviewed 56 proposals. So that gives you a sense of how many proposals can come past a reviewer's desk. So getting a sense of how they read and evaluate submissions can make a huge difference in how you develop your submission. And finally then, we'll zoom out a little and think about the longer journey your work might take. For many researchers, a conference presentation is just the first step towards writing a journal article. So getting that good feedback from the conference process and then feeding that into the publication process. So we'll talk about how to make that transition from the conference presentation to journal article. We're very lucky, very fortunate to have three wonderful presenters with us today. Each will be bringing a different perspective. First, Dale Albanese will walk us through what strong submissions look like across different formats, papers, posters and more, and that'll help you get a feel for what each format requires and what it actually involves on the day when you're presenting. Yu Hui Chang will take us behind the curtain of the review process and share insights into how proposals are assessed and what the reviewers pay attention to. And finally, Garazzi will help us think about how a conference proposal can evolve into a journal article, including how to refine your research questions and choose publication outlets. Together, I hope you find this a really well-rounded sense of how to approach conference submissions. And we really do thank you for being here today. We hope this session feels supportive, practical and encouraging. Please feel free to use the chat function, ask questions. We'll be going through the questions later if we have some time for a Q&A. And with that, I would like to introduce Dale. Dale is an assistant professor in the International Graduate Program of Education and Human Development at National Sun Yat-sen University, where he is involved in graduate teaching and research in comparative education and educational psychology, focusing on multicultural learning. He has long been engaged in international educational exchange and is actively engaged in the Taiwan Education Research Association, or TERA, and is the TERA representative for the World Education Research Association. Wira. Thank you, Dale.
The main goal of what I want to talk about is finding the right format for you for the research that you're presenting. This may be kind of very straightforward for some people. It may make a lot of sense. You know how to parse a conference call for papers and understand what type of submissions to join. And yeah, and so for finding the format for you, we can go ahead to the first slide here. But if you're not going to, but if you submit kind of to the wrong area, it's going to limit your chances of getting in. And so there is some technique to aligning your proposal to the submission here. So first, just really quickly, an oral paper session. I think around the world, sometimes we call these oral sessions. In the US, maybe a little more common to call them paper sessions. This is an oral presentation where you're going to present individually in a scheduled session. And typically, ideally, they find other people who have papers similar to you. There might be a discussant who talks about all of the themes between these papers and ties some things together, but really it's an individual show. And we'll move forward. Next slide. And so a poster session is also a really common format where you're going to put all of your work, your presentation into kind of one visual format. Now, recently at AERA, they've moved to iPosters or digital posters or e-posters, depending on the platform. And they have these nice touch screens, and they have the opportunity to email these posters out to each other. But it's basically the same thing. You're standing up next to your work. And this means you're going to have people passing by, looking over the shoulder, looking for a quick photo. You might have one person who wants to engage you in deep one-on-one conversation. And you always feel like there's not quite enough time to get everything out to everyone, but you need to have kind of an iterative, repeated sharing session here. Now, some conferences are developing more structured poster sessions where they might pull you out and have you do an oral presentation about your poster, and then have a remarks and discussion in a room full of others doing posters. Yeah, next, please. Now, a symposium is something that's a coordinated presentation, a session where you might have multiple perspectives on the same topic. And so in which case, maybe you and other graduate students working together, you and your advisor, or you or your research team might say, hey, we have this topic, and we have these 4 different studies on this, but it's thematically linked together. And so we'd like to take up a whole hour as our group. And so this may require some beforehand kind of networking and planning. And now this image is actually, here now the roundtable session. Yeah, please, we can go ahead. Yeah. And now roundtables are a nice way to sit in groups where people have a shared interest, and you're going to have kind of time for deeper conversation, and a lot of interaction. Depending on the conference and the size, this might be in a large room with lots of people discussing at the same time, in which case we encourage the sign language clapping rather than loud celebration after each presentation. In the context of something like AERA, the American Education Research Association, they have something called special interest groups, which in many other academic contexts might be called working groups, where you have a kind of tailored focus. The researchers thinking about a common problem or theme. But in either case, roundtable is one format. And then next slide is, depending on the conference you go, there may be other types of opportunities. They might be open for workshops, if you have something you can share with people, or even some type of arts-based education or demonstration and performance. And so this last session of AERA attended a wonderful kind of interactive session with a mix of poetry, interpretive dance, and drumming. From 3 scholars who've been working on race and identity and justice issues. And so the audience was able to do a lot of participation and writing. So, conferences are evolving their different formats. So pay attention to what's on offering there and where your research fits best. All right, next slide. And so a little overview here. And welcome to take a screenshot there. I don't know if we'll have the opportunity to share these slides. I'd be willing to do that if we haven't put that. And I guess the recording will be available online. But really the difference here is you might think about this from a couple of perspectives. What do you feel comfortable with? Having a paper or an oral session, you're going to have a chance to stand up with your PowerPoint, maybe have a little bit more um, guided discussion, one time running through your work, some visual aids that are going to help. But this is really good for if you've got a mature study already and you're able to kind of give the concise delivery of the outcomes. And so you've got a real focused story on your work. And then that's going to be open to formal Q&A at the end, and someone might pose something. Now, posters are appropriate for often early findings, exploratory work. It's also really nice for networking. You may find the right people stumble by and ask you some really detailed, nuanced question about your methods, or they say, hey, I'd like to connect with you about something later. And so you get really targeted feedback about things in some cases. And it's open so that's a little bit of an opportunity to have a deeper connection. So there, if you're into that kind of conversational style and lots of multiple short interactions, the poster is nice. Um, and obviously, the symposium requires some type of team-based work and collaboration there, and you have a strong unifying theme. And now roundtables are special for if you have some ideas that you want to discuss more deeply with a range of people who kind of have some shared background. This is a lot more discussion based, and so you can have deep discussion rather than kind of just a performance of presenting everything you did in a real structured, conventional format. Here you're discussing ideas and getting feedback from a lot of people who care about those. So those are some tips for thinking about where's the right format. You can think about where's your research in there and what are you comfortable presenting in. Next slide, please. So a couple of things across the formats that you might want to keep in mind. In terms of getting your foot in the door, the basics matter for submitting to a conference. So one thing is look for the call for papers. Look at the theme that's involved. Are you fitting your paper to the theme? And so this might just be reframing. You have a study already that's in a general area that the conference is about, maybe science education, but they might have a very specific theme and you can frame it there. And make sure that that structure is really easy to follow, and you have that kind of hook, that alluring connection. At the conference itself, think about how can I present this as something shareable, one-page handout or a little summary. QR codes are very popular for this too. And this relates to your submission, getting your foot in the door, is considering the conference conditions. There might be this sense of needing to really justify your work, feeling like you need to demonstrate this academic rigor and all this depth, but we need a short submission, often just the abstract or a short paper, and it needs to be really concise and coherent here. When you're in the conference, you're going to have noisy spaces, you're going to have limited attention span, you're going to have interrupted conversations, people coming in and out of the session, technical failures like Microsoft Teams doesn't have permissions for your computer as you start to present, right? And so we want to have, say, for example, with your posters, you want to have a really clear kind of narrative path rather than just a wall of text. Be able to walk us through your poster quickly. And for your oral presentations, think about the pacing of the concept rather than getting through all this content. This particular slide with all of this content on it really isn't the best example of this. Hopefully I'm able to just pick up concept by concept and move ahead quickly. And nowadays we do have a lot of opportunities to share our content digitally. So again, this means you don't have to articulate everything that's on your slide or in your paper. People can get more information from you later through your QR codes, through the connection with your email and so on. Later about moving beyond just getting your paper accepted, but how but then thinking about your proposal, try and think about your burgeoning researcher identity and how your conference paper might represent part of a research trajectory as you move from a conference presentation that then went into an article that was presented. This is kind of developing your identity. And so one more slide forward, please. So again, fitting with the conference theme, definitely align with the call. And this was because reviewers often have an area where they need to review for the relevance of the paper toward the conference itself. Make sure it's really clear about what's new. And this doesn't have to be all of this. It may not all be empirical, theoretical, and methodological, but maybe it's just that I'm providing some new evidence in a new context for some old theory, right? Think about joining a conversation, the 80-20 rule. 80% is conversation that's going on, what other people have said. What's your 20% contribution here? Um, and then sometimes you may have works in progress and that aren't fully complete yet. Uh, you can find a strategy for developing some type of trajectory, indicating what you expect to find, what you found initially, and make that sound credible. And so put that into a coherent overall framework. And so a couple quick tips here. One idea, I like the idea of the elevator pitch. We've all had that awkward moment trapped in an elevator for 30 to 40 seconds with somebody, and maybe this is the only chance you have to interact with them, and you've got a captivated audience. They're too embarrassed to come in and out of the session. They're going to listen to you. So how do you indicate your one clear claim that you have in your paper and one clear takeaway really quickly? And this goes for while you're presenting, but also for the reviewers here. These reviewers, as Natasha has said, they might have a lot of pressure, have a lot of articles to look at, and so we want something that they can interpret really quickly. Now, this other one is the KISS principle. This is based on a joke about somebody who's getting up to give a big speech for an awards ceremony in the front of the room, and his spouse was there, and just before they get up there, said, remember, KISS, honey, and wrote this down on a piece of paper. And this was to keep it simple, stupid, and so we don't need to be so pejorative, but a little banter between spouses here. But this is the idea that less is more. And in this case, I may already be at the point where I'm over that. More is too much here. So next slide here. Yeah, so we want to avoid putting too much in here. So I'd be remiss if I didn't promote a little bit of an upcoming conference. If you'd like to join us or practice the submissions, we have submissions open until the 20th of this month. I'm sorry, the 30th of this month. The end of this month is the Terra Wera 2026 conference. And so here in Southern Taiwan, one slide forward, we've got who can join us here at Sun Yat-sen, National Sun Yat-sen University, where the ocean meets the mountains, and the monkeys are our VIPs. We've got the Formosan macaques are present on our campus and are well-known members of our community. Okay, thank you very much, and I'll pass it back to Natasha.
I will produce Yu Hui, who is an assistant professor in the Institute of Education and Centre for Teacher Education at National Sun Yat-sen University, where she is involved in graduate teaching with and research in learning sciences and knowledge building for scientific inquiry, media literacy, and female empowerment. She serves as a teacher, educator, and researcher to lead design-based research with practitioners for idea-centered learning in cross-cultural contexts. Whoop, looks like she's just dropped out. We'll try again in a moment. Okay, while we're doing that, Dale, I have a question. As you were speaking, I was wondering what your first conference was and what was the first submission that you put in? What was the format?
Okay, my first conference was actually the North American Taiwan Studies Association conference. Is mostly run by and organized by graduate students in the United States, and I was coming out of Taiwan. And that was a paper presentation on a panel with a discussant, and it required a full paper beforehand. So I had to submit a full paper and give the discussant time to review it, and had some directed questions. And I was up there. I was a young master's student, and I was up there with several senior scholars as well as some doctoral graduate students, and sufficiently intimidated, but everyone was very kind and welcoming, and it was a big full room. And I really haven't had that since in conferences. Most of the time with my paper presentations, it's a small room of people who are really dedicated and interested in that. So the size of your conference, sometimes a small conference might mean a larger audience, and a lot more engagement with scholars at different stages in their work. So that's something to keep in mind too, is some of these kind of flagship conferences like AERA with 15,000, you might not have as much dedicated conversation as a smaller conference.
Wonderful. Thank you. Thank you, Dale. And you, Hui.
Hello.
Over to you. Hi.
Hello. Hi, everyone. Thank you for waiting. I was in the participant mode and now in the speaking mode. So I'm so excited to share about. I know you're all thinking about, should I submit an abstract? Is that something I want to try? Most of the time, I think just go ahead and try, because abstract is a good way to condense, to talk about research in a very concise way. And it also a very good way to help you think about what is my ideas looks like when I presenting to others in a more concise and summarize. How do I summarize it to make it more clearly? So these submissions, hopefully we can extend it. I know it's only 10 days late for the WERA conference submission, but here's a rubric for you to has a reference. I hope that helps you to reduce some anxiety about how can I crafting the abstract. But most of us as a reviewer, we also would like to receive a high quality abstract. Sometimes we understand graduate student, you submit a conference by using your course report or course assignment. That is a good idea, but we need you tweak and then make it tweak a little bit tailored to the research academia format. For example, in this 800-word submission to the WERA conference, you might want to think about how can I begin with a good introduction in the first paragraph, but that's already include an objective, a research objectives, and then mention a little bit about your research framework. So this is a challenge again. It's in a short paragraph of introduction in your 800 abstract. You already need to cover your research objective, your aims, and then what are some theoretical grounding that support you to do this research. And then next, in the next paragraph in your 800 abstract, you might also need to very clear about your research methodology. This is a good way to help you to rethink about claiming and then naming the research methodology. That is how you really conduct that for the data collections, and then guiding you to think about whole the process. So research methodology and data source, that can all come together in one paragraph. That's just my suggestion for you as a reference in your 800 abstract. And then we pay attention about those data source and how you analyze the data. Most of the time, we find out graduate student, when you prepare your abstract, you claiming, you naming, I'm doing a survey or I'm doing an interview, but without telling us about what the details, what's the context, how did you collect those data, and how you verify or evaluate into analysis process. So those are really keep in mind, even just one sentence that can also represent you care about these dimension, like methodology, technique, or object and materials. And then next, moving on, could be the third paragraph for you. That will be presenting your primary findings. Now, this is a conference, so probably you're still a work in progress. We welcome those work because you're still at the beginning or not yet for the analysis, but you already see something on your hand in your work that there's some potential analysis working on right now. And you start to think about those that can help you to see the in-depth of your data and then research. So how you present a result primary findings in one paragraph, that could connect with how you conclude with your current temporary finding and conclusion. So some argument of point of view, but based on your data result, it's very important that how you report in text. I understand that your data is already in a figure, in a table, in somewhere. You visualize that in a beautiful way in a PowerPoint. But the challenge part about how you crafting an abstract for a conference is how you use a 5-sentence to summarize report of fact. Again, I know AI is really helpful currently in many ways, but this should be used ethically. You use AI to guide you how to research idea, how you present your abstract. But I myself, as a reviewer, I do expect more about how you write your own words, how you report your own fact. We don't really need to rely on AI as well, but you still can report your own fact based on your data analysis. And then finally, in your final paragraph to wrap up your 800 abstract for the conference submissions, pay attention about what is the conclusion. So also one sentence about conclusion, and then one highlight about the importance of this research, potential research, how you see this work can very significant of your future scholar of work. What's your future, like the next step looks like? So that can be something one sentence to describe in the final paragraph. So all come together, that's a good alignment for your 800s. It sounds very easy, but I understand usually when I was helping a graduate student to revise a conference submission, we text back and forth at least 5 times to revise how to put everything in the spot and on point so that you won't go too far. And here's whereas behind the stage, it have a scoring like a scale 1 to 5. So for those of you who have those above the 3, you're in the safe zone for accept. But below 2 is have a borderline and really unlikely to be accept. But I will say it still needs time. We still always have some room for improvement. So let's aim for the score about 3 in this abstract about objective and methodology, your data analysis, how you report the finding, and the importance of the scholar of work. So I think that's my part for today to represent as a WERA. I'm one of the local committee hosting the conference in Taiwan in NSICU, and also me and others are also reviewing your submission. We are part of the organizing committee. I see this as a great learning opportunity for you. Just be ready for your research, like an elevator talk, but in a text-based format right now. So I look forward to seeing you in person. You can talk about your research on-site in person, but let's get this first step first to submit the abstract with your peers or with yourself, solo work. We all good. And I look forward to learn from you too. Thank you.
Thank you. And thank you for the encouragement. I really like the way that you highlighted the fact that you can submit at any stage of your candidature or any stage of the project. So it's very difficult to condense a full PhD thesis, for example, into a 20-minute paper. So choosing one question or one aspect of that is fine. I've found that when I'm doing the reviewing that quite often the ones that are not successful are the ones that are incomplete. So if it's an 800-word submission and someone submits 300 words, they really haven't used all the available space to communicate the theoretical framework or their methods and techniques and so on. And looking at the presentation format, the conference theme, and as Dale said, really tailoring your submission to that theme, but also knowing that this can be a complete portion, or you can present a portion of your project in a complete way for this project. I've seen really good submissions that are just based on a literature review. So, what were the methods and techniques of the literature review? What sources were used? What were the results and so on? So it doesn't have to be a full, complete project at the very end. And in fact, for the round tables, I went to a very dear WERA friend of ours who was presenting a round table at AERA. And the first thing she said was, I am working on this incomplete paper. I have been grappling with these ideas for a little while, and I wanted to share them with you so that we can have a discussion about it. And I thought, wow, this is like a really experienced professor saying this. So yes, be brave, have a go, and yes, hopefully you're successful. So thank you so much. That was really helpful. Some really helpful tips there. Okay. Wonderful. Okay, now I am So excited to introduce Gadatsi, who holds a PhD in Curriculum and Instruction from the University of Wisconsin-Madison at the #1 School of Education according to the international rankings. In 2018, she was granted a scholarship from Lacacia Foundation to pursue a PhD. She is a Doctoral and Early Career Network representative of the Multidisciplinary Association of Educational Research, or AMI, at the World Education Research Association, where thank you, Gadatsi.
Thank you, Natasha, for putting all of this together and for inviting us. And I'm really happy to share together with my colleagues. As you said in the beginning, this is a conference paper is usually the first step in our, well, not the first step in research, but there is much more after you present. So I will talk a little bit about, I would just give some overall tips and kind of main steps that are applicable to, you know, submitting a journal article, but more specifically about how to turn your presentation or your conference paper into a research article. So first, as Natasha and Dale already said, you will mostly have a lot of feedback from the conference. So this is really useful. So I would say take into account the feedback that you get with some caution, of course, because, you know, usually it will be good feedback, but sometimes maybe the feedback is not, it is good, or there is some very valuable knowledge or insights that maybe it doesn't apply to your, so I would say, yes, take that into account, but you don't have to do what other people say just because, you know, maybe someone with more experience says it. You know your research best, so it is wise to listen and to take whatever is good and necessary, but don't change your research, you know, if it's already valuable, and it will be if it gets accepted in the conference. So then there's the next step is to expand, right? So you have probably, as we said, a short abstract. In most cases, you will still not have a full paper. So of course, you have to, you know, it's just the typical sections of the literature review, methodology, findings and discussion. And then depending on the journal, there's maybe something more specific. But here, I think what Dale's mentioned in his presentation is really important about the so what, or like what are you contributing? And I think this is the overall thing that will guide or that should guide your writing process. You have to refine probably your research questions and your objectives and be very specific about what is it that you are actually contributing. And then take it from there to refine everything else. So, for example, this, and I know this is something that really depends on each person or research group within social sciences, but I think what's most important, for example, in the literature review or introduction, is go from what you are contributing, look what's there in the literature review or in the overall literature, and then find what's missing and how you are contributing to that. And then don't write the whole, you know, a book chapter about the whole literature review. Just, I would say, be very specific of, you know, if you are doing research on dialogic learning, don't write the whole history of the research there is about this issue, but just go very specifically to what you are saying, what you are doing. And then, you know, you refine your methodology. Yuhui, what she said is really important about being very specific and also being very, as much detail as possible, because methodologies are very useful for if other researchers want to replicate your research. So be as much specific as you can in the methodology, which is something that maybe in the conference we tend to not focus so much on that, but it's really important when you're writing your paper for a journal. What else? Well, and then, you know, just finish the whole process, and the whole paper. Revise your abstract. It's really important because, you know, probably many things changed. Maybe even you changed the focus or the framework. So just don't forget to go back to your abstract and make whatever changes are necessary. And then the next once you have your paper, or when you're almost done with your paper, the journal is really important. So you have to, I think it's a process in itself that takes time to choose or to find the perfect journal for your paper. And there's many things that you can take into account. Of course, the focus, or the kind of the theme that you are, the issue that you are writing about is really important. But there's many things. There are many journals that maybe have papers about a similar topic that you're writing, but then how to choose a specific journal, things that you can find useful are, of course, the impact factor, how much they publish. Maybe if it's, if they publish more papers, it's more likely that yours will be accepted. What type of methodologies? So also read the guidelines very carefully before you submit, or before you even plan to submit there, because maybe your paper is a literature review and they don't publish literature reviews in a specific journal, so you can discard that. Or they only publish quantitative and you're doing qualitative research, or things like that. So it's really important to see what the journal accepts or what the journal publishes, and then also what's the audience. So, but there's really, I think choosing the journal is, it takes time, but it's really important to choose the perfect fit. And then maybe you will not get it into the first journal. So it's also an ongoing process. So once you have chosen your what you think is the best fit for your paper, you follow the guidelines, you submit the paper, and then you just wait and expect for the best. But I think similar to the process of submitting a conference paper, and as Natasha said, if it doesn't get accepted, it doesn't mean that your paper is not good, or that your research is not interesting, or that it's not doing any contribution, but maybe it's because they have many papers already about this topic, or maybe it's because it doesn't fit the scope. So don't be discouraged. I think it's, and many of us have this experience. It's not very usual to get your paper accepted in the first journal that you submitted to. You might have to try several journals, and that's totally fine. In the process, you also learn, or you also can take feedback from the reviewers or from the editors, even though it doesn't get accepted. So, just be patient and make whatever changes are necessary. But yeah, don't give up if it doesn't get accepted. Of course, we hope that it will, and I think eventually it will. But just maybe try different journals, different topics, and I think that's just wait for the process to end, and then but I will say also, it doesn't end when if your paper gets accepted and published. That's not the end of it. So then you have to disseminate it. You have to make it reach not just other scientists, but also citizens, right? So don't finish there. Just continue making your research impactful and achieve social impact in society. So yeah, that's everything that I wanted to share today. And thank you all for this wonderful forum.
Thank you, Gorazzi. You actually said something really important then, and it sort of brought back some memories for me. Now, I have been rejected at the conference submission stage. There are some conferences where the acceptance rate is very low, others where it's easier to get accepted. But I worked so hard on a paper because I knew it was quite challenging to get accepted for this conference. And then I got that dreaded email, the rejection. I have also received rejections for journal articles that I've put in, and I don't know any academic that hasn't. So I'm assuming, Dale, you have as well. Gorazzi, we've received our fair share of rejections, but the rejections shouldn't be viewed as Gorazzi said, this is not a criticism of your work. Occasionally there are reasons, and sometimes we do miss the mark in terms of reading the call for conference proposals or submitting to a journal that doesn't quite fit the scope of our research. We're slightly out of the field. So sometimes it's a matter of finding the place for your work, finding the conference for your work, and so on. I just wanted to mention, in addition to that, that my first publication actually came through a conference. So ECER is the European conference. They have an emerging researchers conference, and everyone that attends that conference has the opportunity to submit a full paper after the conference, and you are assigned a mentor. And that you won't know who the mentor is because it's a blind review process, but they read your paper and they give you some really good formative feedback. So it's not like sending it to a journal. You've got very experienced people giving you feedback. Then you have a chance to revise your paper and resubmit it and get some further feedback. And that was how my first paper was. They recommended a journal, and so almost submitted it on my behalf. That was such a gift to to get my first publication that way, but also to have that support and formative feedback. It wasn't critical. It was just very helpful. So look for opportunities for those types of paper submission for doctoral and emerging researchers, and also look at mentoring programs. So WIRA also does have a mentoring program. Calls have just closed and mentors have been assigned for this year, but you can also look for that next year. Now, I hope you found some of that information interesting, because it does apply to most conferences, almost all conferences. But Dale is just going to quickly share the upcoming WIRA conference, just some very brief information, and then we're going to have some Q&A. So if you've got any questions while Dale is doing this, you can put it in the chat there. But the upcoming conference is the Terra WERA conference. And next year, usually WERA as an organisation is attached to a local conference. And you heard from Yuhui, who is on the local organising committee for this particular conference. Next year, WERA will have a World Congress. The last one happened, I think, 10, 12 years ago. The World Congress will be in Bilbao in Spain, and that is a WERA focus only meeting. So, but this year we're very excited to be going to Taiwan. So Dale, would you like to share some further information? Because submissions haven't closed yet if you are thinking about a conference.
Yeah, thank you for the opportunity. And I hope some of you, if you're inspired to join us, would come to, yes, our Terra WERA conference will take place October 15 to 18. In southern Taiwan. We have an international airport in the city of Kaohsiung, so it's easy to access, or you can fly into the north, take the high-speed rail down. So Terra has an annual conference, and every 2 years we host an international conference, and this is the second time we have the WERA focal meeting here in Taiwan. And we have a very broad, open theme about co-creating knowledge. And we're looking for kind of global trends in education and ideas of, particularly about how the global meets the local. But that said, that we have spaces for kind of all areas of education research, and you need only submit an abstract. You don't need to submit a full paper. And so we accept submissions for the oral papers, posters, as well as symposia. If there's an open call for symposia this year, the deadline is April 30. I know that's just a short time away, but one of my favorite hacks, my favorite tips for strategies for academic knowledge production is to use the conference as an opportunity to really move forward on whatever project you have. And so by submitting to the conference, you at least have something in the pipeline. You prepare for your presentation, which then moves you towards your paper. So this might be the time for you to say, hey, I'm going to organize what I have into that abstract and submit there. So you can see in the chat, we have a link, I believe, for the WERA Terra website. WERA Online, WERA Focal Meeting 2026 Taiwan. Thank you to Natasha for posting that. And from there, you can find the conference website, which I will post directly in here as well. And so there's all the information about submission here. And yeah, we hope to see you here. It should be pretty nice weather in October, very warm and comfortable. We are on the coast with sunsets and lovely subtropical island vibes. So please come and join us and discuss all things academic and educational.
Thank you, Dale. Yes, and I think we made the joke that if you were not in academia, as you are a brilliant academic, you could also be in the tourism industry the way that you promoted Kaohsiung. I'm very much looking forward to it. And if you do go, you'll see some familiar faces. We'll all be there. Now, if you have any questions, please pop them into the chat now. But I'd like to go back to Garazzi and ask you about your experience, your first conference experience.
So actually it was CIMIE, the conference that AMIE, the association that I represent at WIRA. It was in Sevilla. Also, I mean, we're also having, I take this opportunity, we have an open call for submissions because we are also hosting the conference this year in Bilbao as well. And yeah, it was a wonderful, for me, it was a wonderful experience to share. I mean, there are many goals for conferences, I think. One, of course, is to present your research, but also engage with different researchers in a more informal way, not just during the session. And so you get to learn what's being done. It was wonderful to see all the sessions, people present their own research, see what people from different parts of the world are doing. And it was just, yeah, I have really good memories of that first conference. And I think whoever goes to the WIRA Terra conference, I think it will be also a really great opportunity to meet different scholars. As a graduate student, I think it's a really good moment for, launching your career or thinking of future steps. And so, yeah, thank you for asking. It was a great conference.
Do you know, I just love the way your face lit up when I asked that question. So, it's a nice trek down memory lane. My first conference was the AERA conference in San Francisco, and I was presenting a poster. And I'm so glad I was presenting a poster because when I got there, the number of people, it was so big. It's such a big conference. And I was so nervous. I spent so much time creating my poster and talking to people. And I didn't need to worry because once I got there, everyone was super friendly and it was just lovely. But it was wonderful. One of the wonderful things was also attending sessions of those academics whose work I had been reading and citing. And to me, that was so extraordinary that I suppose I didn't consider the real people that were behind the papers I was reading. So that was a lovely way. So I think the poster format for me was a really nice transition before doing a paper and then a symposium. And that all happened, all within 12 months. The first conference was paper, and 12 months later, I was presenting in a symposium, which was a good experience. One other format I don't think we mentioned that I find quite interesting are the Petra Kucha or the lightning talks or the Ignite talks. And they're usually timed. So you have like 10 slides in 5 or 6 minutes and they're short, sharp presentations. But they are also another good way just to present a small part of your research without presenting for a full 20 minutes with the 10 minutes of questions for a paper presentation. Okay, Dale, your favourite format?
Let's see. Well, I think I might be partial to the poster format, and this is maybe a function of my hearing. I live with a hearing disability, and so it's helpful for me to have small conversations and one-on-one, and people approached and focused there. And sometimes, so this is something to keep in mind. Conferences sometimes require a lot of walking. Sometimes the rooms are loud. always bring an extra layer because the air conditioning is turned up too strong. But yeah, so you can stand up and talk to someone and meet them face to face. I feel really comfortable in that format, and that's what I like. So if I am on a panel presentation for an oral paper session, I look forward to after the Q&A, the conversation before we leave the room, kind of in small groups on the way out the doors. And so that's really what I look for in conferences, walking with people in the hallways on the way to the next session, or in the room just after a session is ended.
Yeah, that's fantastic. And quite often after a session has ended, I've walked out the room and continued the conversation. I haven't gone to the following session, and we've almost had a continuation of that session and really rich, robust discussion about research, because suddenly you've got that one-on-one, and it's such a nice way to build up your network. And it's so enriching. Every conference I come back home inspired for my own work, because I've had all of these wonderful collegial and deep conversations about research. And you meet your people, you meet the people who are, as I said before, interested in the same questions. That, I mean, you've dedicated your life or a portion of your life to writing sometimes an 80,000, 100,000 word thesis on a particular topic. And that's quite a significant commitment. And then you meet other people who have in the same way committed. So it's really a wonderful opportunity. All right, Grazie, one last question that I'm going to give you, and that is, what advice do you have for someone who is just starting out their research journey and they're thinking about going to their first conference?
I would say go. Definitely go. If you're hesitating, well, I mean, it requires some resources, but apart from that, I would say, you have nothing to lose. I have very little things to add after what both of you said, but yeah, it's a wonderful way of getting to know the people, as Natasha said, the people that are working on similar topics that you are working on. It is a wonderful moment or a wonderful way of training yourself to talk about your research, because maybe at first you don't have so many opportunities. You're more into the writing process or the research process, but talking about your research is a very important part of the research journey or career. So I would say it's a way of training, presenting or talking about your research. And then just also, as Natasha, one thing why I love, one of the reasons why I love, conferences like the MIE or AMIE and now, AERA and now WIRA, is that every year you see your friends from the conference, right? So it's a great way of meeting with colleagues from all around the world and just catch up and find new research that they are doing and maybe get inspired also for your own research. There's always things that you will learn that you can change in your own work. So yeah, I would say go and make most of your time there. Also, go to sessions, go see the people that you are inspired by or that you want to learn from, and yeah, take all the opportunities that there are.
Thank you so much. That was such a great response. Now, we've only got a couple of minutes left. So what I'd like to do is, Grazie mentioned seeing friends at conferences. And in WIRA, we always talk about the WIRA family, because we've seen each other a few times and we've got this really lovely network and strong community. The Doctoral and Early Career Network, I feel so absolutely blessed and privileged to be able to connect with people. We've actually got a few of our international WIRA reps attending this webinar as well. So it is just wonderful to have their presence here. You are welcome to connect with us. We also have a WIRA LinkedIn page. It's the WIRA Doctoral and Early Career Network LinkedIn page, where we put up a lot of our news and alerts for the webinars. And you can also go on the WIRA website and sign up to the WIRA Doctoral and Early Career Network. I wish wish you all the very best with your research journeys. Thank you so much for attending this webinar, and please reach out if we can help in any way. And last but not least, I would really like to thank our presenters. Thank you very much for your contribution to this webinar.